France's Prime Minister held a cabinet meeting this Tuesday ahead of a high-stakes address to Parliament. Sebastien Lecornu set to outline spending cuts, although he remains on shaky ground after he was reappointed to the post by President Macron this past Friday. His main challenge will be keeping the Socialists and the Conservatives on board, but his days in the job could be numbered, with the far right and far left both submitting confidence motions in Parliament. For more, we can go across to Antonia Kerrigan, standing by at the Élysée Palace. Antonia, good afternoon. Where are these spending cuts likely to come from as the Prime Minister outlines his budget proposal for next year?
Well, what we've heard, the new budget will aim to make just over 30 billion euros of savings, 17 billion of which are to come from spending cuts. A part of this will be a freeze on payouts and pensions from social security, so no increasing with inflation. There are also going to be budget cuts in government employment. There will be more than 3,000 functionary jobs cut, as well as, of course, pensions will be affected, and they're also going to make more money from tax revenue. A big part of that will be bringing more households into taxation. That is, households who are currently considered too low income to pay tax will henceforth be paying tax. They're also looking to remove tax loopholes on higher earners, and after the clamourings from the left for something they keep calling fiscal justice, that is for the higher income members of society to pay their way more, there has been a gesture in that direction too. About 5 billion euros of extra cash is supposed to come from a couple of measures, including a tax on companies making over €1 billion in income, which will be prolonged. It's existing, it will be prolonged for another year, although cut by half, and as well as a surtax on incomes, individual incomes worth of over 250,000. That will be prolonged. Marine Le Pen has called this budget terribly bad. Socialist reaction has said it's a right-wing budget. That's not the biggest surprise in the world. What we're still holding out for, though, of course, is this afternoon when we'll find out how the Prime Minister is positioning himself vis-à-vis the 2023 pension reform. The Socialists are demanding that he suspend it, pending a proper debate in Parliament on it, that it could be formally revoked. So far, no signs, one way or the other, how he's going to react on that, but that could be the real existential question for this government.
And Antonia, is the Prime Minister safe in his job? He was reappointed to the post this past Friday. How long is he expected to last?
Well, safe would certainly be far too strong a word. As you've said, both the radical left and the far right have separately tabled motions of confidence to be voted on Thursday morning. On the left, we know the Greens and the Communists are also going to vote down the government. And on the right, there's also some additional dissident right-wing Republican MPs, so close to the far right, who are also planning to vote down the government. With all that, they're 25 votes short of a majority, roughly. So if the Socialists aren't satisfied this afternoon and do decide to join ranks with them, it's game over for the government on Thursday. Of course, it's not clear that that will happen. The Socialists have laid out their red lines very clearly. Complete and immediate suspension of the pension reform. That said, some socialists are wary about it being seen as agents of chaos, being the ones to be seen as causing new snap elections, while others are much more gung-ho. So you'll have to see as well how the chips fall within the Socialist Party. Will they all follow the party line or not? If so, of course, this will be yet another lightning government.
Antonia, thank you very much for that. Antonia Kerrigan reporting there for us from the Élysée Palace. We can now bring in Paul Smith, Associate Professor in French and Francophone Studies at Nottingham University. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme today. On Friday night, when I got the notification that Sebastien Lecornu had been reappointed to the post, I had to check my phone 3 times to make sure I was reading correctly. Do you think that this government is going to last beyond Thursday?
Well, I think it's very much up in the air. You asked the question there of Antonia, and she said safe would be a very strong word for it. And I think that it really is on a knife edge. It really depends very much on what he outlines today in the the general political statement that he makes and what he says his concessions are going to be. We know a little bit about the budget. We've had a briefing document this morning, and we know that there are elements of it that are meant to please the left and elements that will please the right. But it really is a question on just how far he's willing to go on the idea of properly debating the budget and properly debating, for example, suspension or changes to the pensions reform, and how far that would bring the left in.
The savings he wants to make are a little less than what François Bayrou wanted to make. This, I believe, is to make some 31 billion euros in savings versus 44 billion, which Bayrou attempted to do. Let's talk about the socialist, because the socialist wants to see pension reform scrapped. If he does go ahead and do this, he probably may lose support of the conservative Les Républicains party. So it's a catch-22 situation, isn't it?
I don't think he's going to go as far as completely suspending. I think there are elements of it that will be suspended, particularly for certain, what the French call generations, certain years that are coming towards retirement age. But it's very interesting. This morning, we've seen Laurent Wauquiez, the leader of Les Républicains in the National Assembly, as opposed to the party president, and that's another story altogether. We've seen him say that nobody within Les Républicains, within the National Assembly, wants to vote a motion of no confidence. And of course, for a motion of no confidence to pass, it has to have an absolute majority of votes. So it looks like the right wing of the potential coalition is there. It's really a question of just how many concessions will either bring the socialists on board or at least persuade them not to censure the government on Thursday. There might be a moment later on where that might come along, but it's the idea of at least letting the government get up and running and start the debate in Parliament over the budget. But you're absolutely right, the numbers are much lower than the Bayrou government were proposing.
Do you see any strategy between Emmanuel Macron in what Emmanuel Macron is doing? I mean, reappointing a prime minister who quit on Monday, whose resignation you accepted a couple of hours later. Is there any strategy with renaming him again? What is he trying to do? Just delay the inevitable, which would be dissolving parliament?
It's a very odd strategy. I mean, I almost feel like that line in Apocalypse Now where somebody says, where the Kurtz character says, "What do you think of my methods?" And the reply is, "I don't see any method at all." It's very difficult. I mean, we've seen two prime ministers come and go. One was very strong within Les Républicains, Barnier. Bayrou was the leader of a party. Lecornu, I think for many people, looks too much like Macron. And of course, you mentioned Friday when we had these negotiations between Lecornu and the parties, but chaired by Macron. It looks very much like Macron is trying to take back some kind of control of this situation rather than letting it go. And I think that's a mistake in strategy, because if Lecornu is trying to sell the idea to Parliament that, look, this is our starting point. Let's debate this. You bring your amendments. This is my budget. You bring your amendments. Let's talk about this. I'm not going to is he going to use 49.3 or not? He hasn't gone back and revisited that idea. So I think that the Macron strategy is frankly not working. It's not convincing the parties that it's not really him that's in the room rather than Lecornu.
Is the fact that the last time when Lecornu stepped down, he said it was egos that were essentially getting the better of these politicians, and this is also what's looming in the background, isn't it? The presidency that's up for grabs in 2027.
Yes, there's a great deal of that. And one of the problems, of course, for Lecornu was the position that was taken by Bruno Retailleau, the leader of Les Républicains. But of course, he's in the Senate. This is to come back to the right. That's the important thing, that even within Les Républicains, you have a party that's pulling in two directions. Retailleau is planning to stand in 2027. Wauquiez is not in any position really to stand in 2027. So, and you've got the party which is two kinds of elements. The Senate, because Retailleau is a senator, as opposed to Wauquiez. So that's one of the egos. It's interesting that one or two other key players in the previous government have gone. Though Gérald Darmanin, who some of us thought was going to be a candidate for 2027, has actually announced this morning that he's stepping down from his role within the presidential party Renaissance in order to be as he puts it, a good servant of the country. So there is also this, as you say, this game of egos. And I think that Retailleau's position was pretty much untenable. Part of the problem is that all of these political groups think they've got a majority by themselves, which they don't have. And again, this comes back to the inability to form coalitions.
I know it's too early to ask questions about Emmanuel Macron's legacy, but one needs to think of this because if he does go ahead and dissolve the National Assembly, the great risk is that the far-right National Rally increases their seat share in parliament. And this begs the question of Macron, doesn't it? Because he spent his entire presidency looking over his shoulder at Marine Le Pen. And then here we are today where they are an emboldened party here in France.
Well, yes, you're right. And of course, he's always presented himself as being the last bulwark, if you like, the last defence against Le Pen. If he were to dissolve Parliament and if they were to become the single largest party, which is certainly a possibility, if not a probability, then one would ask some big questions. But this might also be part of the playbook that... Let's imagine that he dissolves Parliament by the end of this week or early next week. We have an election and they actually are the biggest group. Do they really want to govern? Does the National Rally really want to govern and make an absolute, not govern well for a year and then we have a presidential election? Is that really what they want? I suspect that they do. They would take that. They would, bite your hand off if you offered it. But it's a very real threat.
They say they're ready for an election and they're waiting to go. Let's see how this story pans out. Thank you very much, Paul Smith, for joining us on the program today.